all of the big flatbeds with the steel that you see are all brought in by barge and parked on the island. So there's the barging facility. It's a barge that's spudded into the river. It's going to be there for about a year, maybe a little more than a year. It has a bridge that goes from the barge onto the island that trucks drive onto. And what happens is that a tugboat will come with a traveling barge. That barge will have several trucks parked on it, and they dock either at the north or south end of that barge there, depending on which way the current is flowing. The current flows very strongly in both directions, so if it's flowing down, it'll park at the north end. If it's flowing up, it'll park at the south end. The trucks drive off of the traveling barge onto the interim barge and then onto the island. What you can't see from here is that the level is raised up by about 4 or 5 feet. So that bridge actually goes over the seawall. We don't touch the seawall here. So we have to raise it up. So it's a big gravel ramp that goes up about 4 to 5 feet to get the trucks from the level of the island up to the level of the bridge. And then once they get off there, they drive up here and they park up here, or they park next to the buildings for the steel to be lifted. The steel's coming from Canada.
Henry, you're in the lee of the current for safety reasons in terms of the possibility for the barge pushing your barge.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a situation where the tug has to be pushing the barge.
Are they powered while unloading? I mean,
yeah, the tug stays. They're not tied up. The tug stays.
What was the cost of the barge?
I don't know.
Approximate?
A couple $1 million.
What will happen when you're finished with the use of it?
We'll give it back.
Can it be used for the ferry?
No, it can't. It's a different thing. We're just renting it. We're renting it from a company called Marine, which is providing the services. So they fit it out. We rented the barge. They fitted it out with all of the ramps that are specific for this job. Phase 2 area. So where we were standing down below, that's the end of phase 1. So all of the landscape, everything will be finished from there. You're looking at 5 acres north of you, 7 acres south of us. And all of this will be open as public open space, but it's not going to be finished with the same sort of landscape. It's going to be seeded as a meadow for access. But from here on south, there's about 7 acres.
How many buildings will be all told?
Well, let's see, there's probably about 10, somewhere between 10 and 11. Yeah, the whole project, that's a great point. So the whole project is approved for up to 2.1 million square feet of space. Phase 1 is about 750,000 square feet. Phase 2 we anticipate the same, and same with phase 3. And doing their work to connect them with companies that are doing the sorts of things that they're interested in doing. So it doesn't work if you have students who are studying for a year at a school, year or 2 years. Remember, these are master students. If they're spending all their time on their academic work and then they graduate, they're not going to have any kind of connections within the industry in New York. But the goal here is that during their academic experience, there's also something called studio work, where they're working with companies, dealing with specific problems, dealing with specific issues, and making those kinds of connections so they're understanding the corporate world in New York and who's doing what, so that by the time they graduate, they will have already had experience working with New York companies. They will have had experience meeting leaders of New York companies, and so they'll have those connections and those abilities to stay. And with spaces like the bridge, they'll have an opportunity to potentially rent a space in a co-working space, to continue working with some of their advisors who will be in industry. So it's really tied to the academic program. That's what the whole campus is about.
And as we speak to lots of players in industry, we are hearing such excitement over the access to talent that this will create, right? So many times when you talk to tech companies, they say one of the biggest challenges is finding talent, and that New York hasn't had the same type of opportunity or access to that type of talent that San Francisco has. And so looking at this is really a tremendous amount of excitement for both access to talent and also resource and intellectual capital for the New York City tech industry.
Do you have any idea of how much it would cost to rent a space yet?
You'd have to ask Kay.
So I'm not gonna quote numbers here, but it is a ground-up new construction building, incredible architecture, incredible opportunity for people to be able to collaborate. But it's not a lot of space. So we have to have the ability to really see what we can do to try to recruit, not just recruit, but really kind of select and curate the most dynamic group of companies that will make the ecosystem and successful in terms of really producing innovation and the commercialization of new products and technologies as we can. So it's pretty exciting. There's good interest.
But I assume that for students, or like for recently graduated students who would be trying to get them a little bit of a deal because they're newly.
So for new students, it's
Or
most
like
likely that they would likely go into a co-working type space.
Yeah.
Right. So depending upon the company that they've started, how much funding they've been able to receive, they could be a group of 5, 7. Maybe they take a space within a co-working where it's short term, they don't have the longer term commitment. So the kind of the way the composition of the building creates that flexibility to have diversity of size and types of companies. And the design of the building itself too, Weiss and Freddie spent a lot of time trying to think about how do you create those connections between Cornell, who will be in the building, as well as industry, and trying to create bridges through the building and connections with visual and physical throughout the building.
So I think the Western Queens anticipates companies graduating from the Cornell campus moving over to some of the warehouse space over in Long Island City. Do you see that as a realistic thing as far as city involved in any of the projects in Western Queens?
We're not part of that effort, but I think that Cornell, as they're having tremendous success having companies graduate out of their program, I think the opportunities for where companies go creates potential throughout the city, right? There's opportunity to stay on campus looking at the types of work that companies are doing, the strengths and the areas of expertise that Cornell Tech has been developing, the energy that will be on campus with the events, program, and everything that will be happening on campus. I think will create a really tremendous draw for companies and students to stay on campus even as they go through the program, as they graduate from the program, and then as looking outside the city as well, or outside Roosevelt Island as well, kind of looking at those opportunities as well. I think it will create a source of demand for lots of different areas throughout the city.
It's interesting, since I started working on this project about 3.5 years ago, the amount of activity of construction in Queens is really incredible. I think the thing that most people, the people who are not necessarily from New York or familiar with this area, are most surprised at when they come out here is that they know the Manhattan skyline, but what they haven't really seen before is the Queens skyline, particularly some of the buildings in the last 3.5 years, and some of the buildings that are happening in downtown Long Island City. So it's really quite surprising, I think, when people come out here to see that level of development on both sides of the river. And then when you talk about the ferry, which is going to start at that bridge pier in 2017 and connect up from Astoria down to Long Island City and then across to 34th Street, it really gets people thinking in a different way about how central this site potentially could be.
Where are the geothermal wells going to be dug? How deep are they going?
Where that truck is, that red truck, that's the lawn space. That's the southern end of the Bloomberg Center with the cafe at the ground floor, which opens out onto the lawn. It's about a 3/4 of an acre lawn. And there'll be about 80 geothermal wells. They're probably between 400 and 500 feet deep or so.
Sorry, how many did you say?
About 80.
And how much energy will come from that?
A lot.
As a percentage of the total?
Well, it'll. There's no gas-fired boilers in the Bloomberg Center, so it provides the constant temperature water for the heating and cooling systems. That is the heating and cooling system for the building.
Oh, just one more. In the public space, will there be wireless? I assume there's like wireless service in the public space. Is that?
Yeah, we're working on that wireless. So as we understand it, there's not enough capacity at the moment with the Roosevelt Island service, and we're looking to work with providers to make sure that we have service down here. So we'd like to do that, but we don't know the answer to that yet.